Let's start from the top and go down to the bottom. So we have the mouth and nose, right? So we'll say that mouth, nose, lips, teeth. He's happy because he's in ENT class. All right. So the air comes in through the nose, and or it can also come in through the mouth, right? So we got that down. All right, so it moves through the oropharynx and the nasopharynx. The oropharynx and the nasopharynx are the spaces behind the nose and behind the mouth. So this is the nose and this is the mouth, but the space behind the mouth, when you're going inside the body now, this kind of oral cavity, this space behind the mouth, this is the oropharynx. All right, that space behind the nose is the nasopharynx. You guys have to know that stuff too. It's the nasopharynx. Nasopharynx. Nasopharynx, and the pharynx includes both areas. So altogether, because they both meet in the back space and the inside, they both meet. So together, it's called the pharynx. But if we're talking about one specific area versus another one, then we say nasopharynx versus oropharynx. But it's all really one connected part. We're just calling it based off its location. Air moves down, moves towards the lungs. Epiglottis closes over glottic opening. So now let's go over that. I'm gonna use a different color for that. Okay, so right here, so I'm gonna kind of connect these, make a funny looking face, but just to get my point across, okay? There you go, that's a head. All right, so right here in the front part of your throat, you have your windpipe. What's the medical name for the windpipe? Does anybody know that? I don't know if
a trachea?
Trachea, yeah, good. So that windpipe is called the trachea. Write that down if you don't know that. You have to know all these names. Trachea. From the trachea, this branches off and into both of your lungs from the trachea. So it's trachea around this point right here. It branches off into your lungs, okay? And those, when they branch off, they're called your bronchi. So these two are called bronchi. Bronchi. And this epiglottis thing we're talking about, it sits right here. It sits right above the trachea. And it's like a little leaf shaped thing. It's like about that. This is the epiglottis. Glottis. Okay? And it's like a little tongue behind your big tongue. It's actually kind of stuck to your big tongue. So we'll say this is your big tongue. Right? And it's kind of gets stuck back there. And it has a job. The job of the epiglottis is to protect your windpipe. And your windpipe is the trachea. Okay? I'll put trachea. Okay, something else that's super important. That hole right here, see where that opening is for the trachea? That hole also has a name. I'll put it right here. It's called the glottis. You'll also see it sometimes as the glottic opening. Okay, that's why this thing right here is called the epiglottis. Anytime you see epi in front of anything in the medical field, that means that it's on top of something. So epigastric, the top gastric region, gas, think of farts, gas, right? GI. Epigastric means the top part of your stomach. Epidermis is the top part of your layer. Epiglottis is above the glottic opening. Does that make any sense now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so trachea, but really it's protecting the glottic opening that's in the trachea. It's all connected. Okay, so it just covers this, and what it does is anytime you chew food, you get that little mushy thing, And what the glottic opening does, what the epiglottis does, is that it will close down like a cap. So when you swallow the food just goes here and then bounces back into your other hole, the esophagus that's right behind your windpipe. So the food goes into the correct hole instead of going down your lungs. You guys see how that works? Okay, that's how that works. Okay, so that's how your own airway is protected. That's why whenever you're chewing food and you're joking around and you're taking breath, you're chewing food, and then you start laughing because you're joking around. It's like that food's going down, and as air's coming in, it's like this is opening up, so it gets sucked into that hole, and that's how people choke. That's why you shouldn't eat because you have this mechanism here. You're not meant to eat and chew at the same time. Okay, so that's how you. So when you're choking from food, just so you guys know, when you're choking from food, it's really just like the food that got stuck right here, like between the epiglottis and the glottic opening of the trachea. Okay. Any questions? Nope. All right, cool. Let's keep going. Okay, so now we have more stuff. This is kind of a mess. So I'm gonna use different colors. I'll keep it there. So we're gonna just go over the anatomy. I'm just gonna lecture probably until we're done. If you guys have any questions, let me know at any time. But let's break this down even further. So let's go into larynx. The larynx, now we're still talking about this area. Okay? So the larynx is right here. Okay, your Adam's apple. You guys know what Adam's apple is?
Yeah.
Males tend to have it predominantly stronger, and that is the larynx. So whenever you hear Adam's apple, that's the layman's terms for the larynx. So the larynx is the Adam's apple. It's like the medical term for the Adam's apple. All right, so it's right here. It's right where the neck starts, pretty much. Yeah, where the neck area is at. This whole area right here, from right here to right here, and then my trachea. So look guys, real quick. So this is my larynx, right? So this is my larynx. So my trachea actually is like starts like somewhere right here. So the trachea kind of starts in the larynx, okay? And then my epiglottis would be like right here somewhere. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. And so the voice box, known as the larynx, the vocal cords are actually found right at the glottic opening. They're right here, okay? And that's what allows you to talk when you move these things, okay? Cricoid cartilage, forms lower portion, okay? So your trachea, we talked about that. That's this pipe that's in the larynx, all right? This section is called the larynx, called the neck area. When we're talking about the airway, it's called the larynx. And then from there, we branch off into your bronchi. So that's these two, we talked about that. And then your bronchioles, okay? So your bronchioles are just smaller tubes that branch off from the bronchi. That's all that is, okay? And then this, a general rule that I think will help out every single one of you guys for the medical field is there's always little tricks that's gonna help you remember stuff. Is that when it comes to a tube in the body, I don't care if that tube is carrying oxygen, I don't care if it's carrying blood. This is a general rule. If it's a tube in the body, as the tube gets smaller in diameter, the name gets longer. So now they're bronchioles. And I'm gonna show you the other rule for this too. This applies to every single tube in the body. Like for example, veins, when they get smaller like this, let's say there was a big vein going into smaller veins, are now venules. Arteries, when they're big arteries, let's imagine this is an artery going into a small artery, are called arterioles. And it keeps going. And it even applies to other stuff too. Like you guys know what of a cell, right? A cell has like little organs and stuff inside that make it, and has a nucleus like the brain. Well, the organs are called organelles. Like, you know, that's just, if you remember that, the little tricks that'll kind of help you out. All right. And then at the very end of these bronchioles, we have air sacs. Who knows what these air sacs are called? Who could say that? Alveoli. And this is where the magic happens. This is where that gas exchange, that CO2 that we made, that byproduct for making ATP, goes into here from the blood, and you push it out, and all that air comes into the alveoli, and from the alveoli, this is where it goes into your blood. All right, at the alveoli is where the O2 you bring in goes into the actual blood. Okay, so alveoli. And then I'll make that note over here too. I think it's worth taking that note. So alveoli, here we go, alveoli. This is where the oxygen you bring in goes into the blood. So it goes from the pulmonary / aka respiratory system into your blood system. So that's where that's kind of where the two systems meet, the air system and the blood system. Does that make sense? Like you have an air intake system and you have a fluid system, and this is where they meet to keep the car running, the car that is you. Okay, so this is where the O2 you bring in transfers or moves into the blood. Any questions about that at all? No? Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, we just went over the entire airway. This is the entire airway system. I'm gonna break this system down.